Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dorris. I'm running for the U.S. House of Representatives in Indiana's 9th Congressional District. For the purposes of shameless self-promotion, today we're going to be reading from my website, and I'm going to be giving you some feedback on it. You know, websites are great and all, but until you hear that feedback, you don't really necessarily understand. We've got a lot to get to, so let's get to it. So, this is my website, dliamdoris.com. That is dliamdoris.com. All right, we're going to skip the intro, and we're going to get into the meat and potatoes here. I've identified crucial areas where our nation demands urgent change. The essentials for human life. The basic needs of individuals, food, clothing, shelter, and healthcare, should never be commodities subjected to the free market. Struggling to meet these fundamental needs breeds misery and is often the root cause of social unrest and crime. Basically, I'm saying that people need food, clothing, and shelter and healthcare to survive. Whenever they have the essentials needed for life, it's simple. They're just happier people. Crime goes down, things improve. Nobody should ever have to starve or be homeless or, without a home. Nobody should, not have clothes on their back, and they shouldn't, have to deal without health care. I mean, these are just essentials for human life. It's not like we're living in 1818 anymore. We're living in 2024. These things should be provided to each and every citizen, regardless of what their socioeconomic status is, period. There's nothing more really you could say about that. That's just what should happen. A lot of people ask, how can we make that happen? Well, how it's going to happen is not necessarily as important as setting that goal. We need to get people their basic necessities no matter what, and having them, spend all day, every day trying to go and scrounge that up and spend every cent that they have on those basic essentials. It's just not living, man. The way I believe is that economic freedom is the only true freedom. If you don't have economic freedom, you don't have true freedom. There it is. Rejection of legalized bribery. Due to Supreme Court rulings of Citizens United and Buckley versus Vallejo and a few others, what has happened is that our representatives, our senators, even the President of the United States is able to be legally bribed. And I'll give you a quick rundown on how that goes about. So essentially what happens is it comes in the form of big campaign donations or super PACs, super PACs running ads, whatever, There's supposed to be a separation between candidates and their PACs, but there usually isn't, and it's usually well connected. And a lot of times the candidates themselves are making the calls, but the reality is that you have big groups out there that have specific interests. So what happens is they give out the money or the contribution, whether or not it's gifts or straight up money, whatever it may be. They're like, hey, we have this and we can put it out for you, but we want you to sign this piece of legislation. No questions asked. And the reality is that too many of our politicians, most of them, in fact, basically they get a big fat check and a bill to sign and says, hey, here's your check, just sign it and get rid of it. Vote this way. And whenever they do that, they're not even reading this legislation. Like, I'm a plebeian blobber. I don't necessarily, I don't claim to be smarter than anybody else, but I guarantee you that I read more legislation than most of our U.S. House of Representatives and our Senate. Why? I just open it up. I'm a technician by trade. Whenever I read these things, they're clear to me, clear as day. Some people say they read like VCR instructions. Well, I agree, they do. That's why it's easy for me to read it. So I read these, and I'm like, wow, what are they voting on? Case in point, take the Patriot Act. Nobody read the Patriot Act, and anybody who does is like, wow, what is this? What did they sign? But I digress. Whenever Companies, corporations, giant PACs are putting out this stuff, giving out fat, big checks and saying, sign here, vote yes here, bada bing, bada boom. Right now, we don't have a representative republic. We have an oligarchy. But moving on. Government serving the people. A clear demarcation between government and corporate interests is imperative. Corporations represent profit motives, while the government's role should be centered on the welfare of its citizens, particularly those grappling with meeting their basic needs. This is pretty self-explanatory, you know. We don't need a wall between us and Mexico necessarily. We need a wall between corporations and our government. The government right now, they just aren't serving the needs of the people. They're serving the needs of big moneyed interests, corporations, military industrial complex, you name it. You know, whenever those two have started to mix, it's no longer a representative republic. It is no longer a democracy. It is effectively an oligarchy. One second. And we can't have that. We can't have that going on. We can't have that going on. Challenges to our democratic principles. I know that sounds a little. I just wish I could phrase that just a little bit more. But here we go. Challenges to our democratic principles. The equation of money and speech in our democratic system silences the majority, giving a disproportionate voice to the affluent minority. This imbalance undermines the essence of democracy, muting over 90% of the populace. This is absolutely 100% true. Let me go over this real quick with you. What happened is money is now ruled to be free speech. Well, and so what that means is people with money have free speech. Those people who don't, they're completely muted. And whenever I say big money, I'm not talking about, you know, us plebeian blah blabbers. I'm not talking about even like teachers. I'm not talking about doctors. You know, and to some short extent, maybe professional athletes, but everybody who has over, you know, several $1 million are the only ones that have free speech in this nation. You know, and so they're putting this stuff up, you know, on all of our media outlets. You know, it is specifically meant to favor them and not us. You know, we don't have a voice in this. This is like, oh my God, this is unacceptable. Well, nobody's listening to us. You know why they're not listening to us? Because they don't want to. They want to put money in their pockets. They care more about their personal profits than how you're treated in life. And it's just as simple as that. Remember, when money equals free speech, we don't got it. Emphasis on diplomacy and humanity. Let's go over this here real quick. Upholding humane values and diplomacy, both at home and on the global stage, defines our moral compass. Those who reject these principles cannot be allies in our pursuit for a just and equitable society. Simply put, I'm against the war machine. You know, wars more often than not are fought for profit, and they are there just to enrich the military-industrial complex. You know, the people putting together the weapons of destruction. You know, let's face it, the only winner in a war, it's not side A, it's not side B, it's the military-industrial complex selling both sides their weapons. You know, they're like, we'll just get richer, buy more weapons. You know, it's a star-belly sneech versus the non-star-belly sneech. You know, it doesn't matter who's got a star on their belly. The person who's swapping back and forth the star is making the money. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just the way it is. I know that's a Dr. Seuss reference. But the reality is the military industrial complex, they win no matter who wins and who loses in any given conflict. Wars should only be fought as a response to human rights concerns or cases such as genocide. They shouldn't be, you know, fighting over, you know, whose flag is on what side or, you know, whatever tribalist freaking thing that they have. You know, keep in mind, a lot of times wars are being instigated by the military-industrial complex. Why? For the purposes of making money. And if you don't realize that, if you don't see that, listen to Eisenhower. He'll tell you all about it. But let's move on. Condemnation of the forever wars. This dovetails in just perfect. Wars are fueled by the profit-driven interest of corporations and the wealthy and breed suffering, claiming the lives of soldiers and civilians while lining the pockets of the industry. Rejecting the foreign wars is paramount to upholding dignity and global peace. There it is. Like I went over this just a few seconds ago. There it is. It's self-explanatory. Reject all the forever wars. Nobody should be getting rich off the pain and suffering of others. Ever. There's nothing more you can really say about that. And those who do are just reprehensible. And by the way, they're the ones paying off our politicians to write these bills. This is my homepage. I'm not going to go over some at the bottom. I've already said a lot of that in my little signature here. Up at the top. I'm a democratic socialist. Yes, I'm one of those crazy socialist kind of guys.